Okay, so in the last session, we had our discussion on the different, features which in the actually cloud we are looking for there. So remember, these are the 5 features. And if you remember, there is an acronym we had utilized there that is called BROM, which is broad network access, rapid elasticity, resource pooling, on-demand self-service, and measured service. So that is the 5 features we had already discussed in our last session there. So let's discuss furthermore here. So if you remember last session, I had started my discussion with 5-4-3 rule there. And in this 5-4-3 rule, we had first discussed about this particular 5 different features, unique features of the cloud there. So if I'm entertaining any of the cloud provider for my organization, I'm definitely looking for those 5 features first there. If it is not, okay, I can treat that particular provider as the general managed service provider, but I cannot say that it is actually the cloud service provider. These are the essential characters of the cloud, which as per the NIST must have to be there. Otherwise, the federal governments are specifically not going to entertain such providers, as a cloud service provider there. Apart from that, in 5-4-3 rule, we have, so what we had discussed is the 5 essential characters of the cloud. Now we are moving towards the 4 different deployment model of the cloud there. So when I'm saying deployment model, okay, when I'm saying deployment model, so we have total of 4 different deployment model. One of the popular deployment model we have around us is called as the public cloud. So this is the most widely used cloud, you can say the deployment model we have till now there. Because when we are going on the cloud, and definitely if I'm looking for all of the different features of the cloud, public cloud is actually going to best fits all of other requirement there. First thing, if I'm saying about the public cloud, the cloud infrastructure is made available to the general public or a large industry group, and it is actually owned by organization who is selling the cloud services there. It could be some government entity, it could be some group of organization who is actually trying to offer these services to all around the world there. So this public cloud is generally available for all of the users around the world there. And some of the example we can take here, one of the best example we have, and you can say one of the uh, popular example we have is AWS, Azure Web Service. Sorry, AWS Web Services there. Okay, Amazon Web Services, I must say there. And another one we have is the Azure from the Microsoft. Another one we have is the Google Cloud Provider, which is the GCP. Apart from that, we can also consider Oracle Cloud. This is the another popular one, but I must say that it is not as much popular as compared to the AWS, Azure, and GCP there. So according to Gartner's report, AWS, Azure, and GCP is on top right now there. And definitely AWS is the first, Azure is the second, and GCP is the third one right now in the rank there. If I'm going for the other providers, we have Oracle as well. And apart from that, there is one more provider which is coming out that is called as Alibaba. So these are the most widely used public cloud providers till now we have there. Definitely to offer the cloud services, these all providers are taking the support of cloud brokers. Now, what is that cloud broker? We will be discussing in our further modules there. But yes, these are the well-known cloud providers, which is offering services to all of the users around the world there. And definitely, if you're going to take any example, I think in our previous section we had a previous lesson we had already discussed some of the examples there. But this console in front of your screen is actually is the public cloud provider. So if I'm going to the dashboard of this particular one, so this is the dashboard, and these are some of the services right now in my console I'm utilizing. If you can see here, I'm actually utilizing right now the app services, storage account, key vault for managing the encryption key or the private key there, Azure container registry, which is actually to manage the private images for the container, We have the container instances here. Now, these are the services which right now I am utilizing. Definitely, if I want to utilize other services, I can simply go to the all services section and I can utilize all of the services which I'm actually interested in. And for each of the user, I must say each category of the users here, for the programmers, for the infrastructure guys, for the machine learning guys, I must say for the the guys who is very much interested in the data projects there. So for each of them is actually having some of the services always available there. Okay, and you can actually utilize your interesting services there, and you can configure within a minute. Sometime I can say there, and I cannot say every time it is in the minute there, because definitely if I'm trying to set up a complete infrastructure, I must say the cloud logical infrastructure, not the physical infrastructure. So if I'm trying to set up the whole physical logical infrastructure onto the cloud, definitely I have to invest some time. But before investing that particular time for the configuration, we also have to spend a good amount of time in planning the configurations for the logical model. So we also have to check it out how exactly I'm going to ingest the traffic from the internet, how exactly it will be entertained in my logical services, and what are the different inspection services I will be utilizing. So I must say that there are very many of the different services we have there, which we are actually going to utilize there.
Right,
Same
right.
thing if I'm,
Sorry.
yeah, please.
In this list here of when you said public cloud and you listed the big names, to me, I agree with the big names, but I would say those names are in the, I don't know if that's the right word, generic cloud services, because there's also like verticals such as like where Salesforce or SAP like play and become the big players, right? And those are also public cloud, aren't they? In their
Yeah, yeah,
space. Okay.
yep. They are. But no, the name which I had right now taken there, they are the big players in all version, or I must say they're all service models of the cloud there. So if you're
Yeah.
going for the service model, we have the software as a service, we have the platform as a service, and we have the infrastructure service. So these providers are actually the big names for all of the service model. But when you go for the SAP, or even you go for the other software as a service based name you have taken there, they are very much restricted towards the software as a service model there.
Yeah, for
Yes.
example, Salesforce. Yeah, Salesforce does not give you the infrastructure as a service.
Exactly.
Hmm.
That's exactly what I was. Yeah. Like would you say that on software as a service that those 5 names that you have on the page are actually, maybe Oracle is, but are those actually software as a service providers as well, or are they really more
Correct,
platform than software? That's the
correct.
question.
Yeah, so yeah, definitely we will be also exploring those providers, because definitely if I'm going for the Salesforce, Salesforce is one of the big name here right now, because
Yeah.
they are also covering a very big share of the market, specifically in software. I must say that software as a service is one of the popular service model of the cloud there. I must say that is most of the users are actually utilizing this software as a service model only there, because when we go for the platform as a service or for infrastructure service, we are actually restricting the users there, because only the group of users are actually going to utilize there, like infrastructure service. Only the infrastructure guys who actually know about the infrastructure services there, like I must say the network, I must say the compute, I must say the name of load balancers and other services which is actually required while setting up the whole infrastructure of the cloud is going to be the part of that one. So right now the name I had taken there, but basically the name I had taken is actually from the Gartner's report as well there, because according to the Gartner report, AWS, Azure, and GCP is actually on top of them there, and after that Oracle and Alibaba is there. Oracle is very much popular for their database services there. So I must say for other services, Oracle is not that much of popular there. But yeah, definitely they are actually coming very fastly in the market there. One of the hidden report I must say there about the Oracle, all of the Oracle cloud services there, mostly I must say 60%, I must say there, 60% of the cloud services are actually configured from the same vendor who had, or you must say from the same users who had configured the AWS and Azure there. Now, these are actually the hidden report there, which I'm actually sharing on behalf of, I must say, the Oracle guys there, because that is what the internal reports. When you're going to check it on the Azure or AWS, and when you're going to work under the Oracle, you will find very much similarities there in terms of their services there.
Yeah, but I believe that Salesforce in the background, the infrastructure it takes from AWS. So basically, the AWS is the infrastructure provider, and Salesforce is the front-end SaaS. So primarily, if you subscribe to Salesforce Cloud, the infrastructure is provided by the AWS in the background. The front-end SaaS is provided by the Salesforce.
Right, and yeah, you're absolutely. I don't know specific on that one, but yes, AWS.
It's the same thing. I think
definitely.
applies to the other SaaS providers too. They don't. I don't think so. Some of them may be using Google, some of them using maybe Azure. Most of these SaaS providers,
Or they use more than one.
They use this thing. Yeah, go ahead, Rajiv.
Yeah, please. Okay, so yeah, so what we had seen there, these are actually some of the service or some of the deployment model we have there, and as you say that public cloud is actually one of the deployment model we have, which we are commonly utilizing there specifically to offer the services to my end user. I must say there, to my cloud users there. So this is the another thing. The another service model we have under the deployment model. So this is the first one I must say there. Apart from that, under the deployment model, we have the private cloud. Now, if I'm having, see, there are two set of data we have within an organization. And I must say there, for that, you must have to do the proper overall categorization of the data. So in a security world, what exactly we need to do, we have to categorize the data, and it is the responsibility of the data owner. So, these responsibility, it's actually going to come very frequently in our upcoming sections as well. So we have data owner, and then there is one more role we are very much utilizing, and that is called the data custodian. So data owner and data custodian. When I'm saying data owner main responsibility is to classify the information which they have or what they are actually managing. When I'm saying managing, the data owner is actually those person who actually understand how exactly the information or the data or the asset is actually very much important for the goal of the organization there. So because they know, they are the correct person who can actually classify the data or the asset.
Well,
and based
this to me sounds like that organization would already have classes of data and well-defined classes of data. Is that correct when you say data owner classifies it?
Okay, so no, I'm actually talking from the scratch. Okay, now see, try to understand in this way there. Suppose I'm having organization, and that organization is having set of informations there, right? So before the data or the asset needs to be getting protected there, what we have to do, we have to classify the data. Now classification is actually going to provide me the proper hierarchy there, when I'm actually going to understand what is the importance of the data, and accordingly I'm going to categorize the data into the relevant classification level there. So
right, and
if
I'm just saying that there may not be a classification level. I mean, at least in my experience, a data owner cannot classify until there are well-defined classification levels in an organization.
yeah, definitely, they're actually going to use some defined classification schema there.
That's what I meant, because I'm going to just speak for us, Neturian, for instance. We as a company, and we're all from the same company, still need to define our classification levels, and thus we data owners don't know how to classify because we don't have
a definition for it.
Yeah, but we can't, as data owners, we cannot classify because we don't have classes. We don't have levels.
For example, confidential, sensitive, informational, etc.
Correct. So yeah, definitely we require some sort of classification schema there. But the thing is, this classification schema also needs to be decided by the organization itself there. right? So
Correct.
this is the reason we are actually going to, take the help of sometime the, the overall enterprise architectural guys there, who's actually going to help me to design the end-to-end solution itself there. And they will also help me to select the proper classification schema which actually required. Although the classification schema is not like we need to have some kind of hard coded there, and that is the only fixed schema I'm going to utilize it there. But definitely we can actually utilize, or we can also create our own classification schema there. But the whole and sole purpose of this particular classification is to make sure that you know what exactly the overall impact of the data, impact on the data, if it is actually going to be lost, or might be it is going to be compromised there. And accordingly, you are going to put the data into relevant classification level there, right? So definitely data owner will do the classification, and after the classification, he's going to put a certain level on the data there. Now this level is actually going to let me know, it means I should say that this level is actually going to let other guys know that what exactly the importance of this particular data is for the organization and how they need to treat. So definitely we need to also provide a proper training, or might be awareness training there, to let them know how exactly they need to handle the data itself there. So main purpose here, the data owner is actually going to classify the data, because normally they know what exactly the overall impact on the goal if this particular data or the asset is actually going to be compromised there. And after that, they will delegate this particular responsibility specifically for the protection, because after the classification, you're going to do the leveling, and after the leveling, with the help of I must say the CISO or information security managers, I will be also selecting the proper control. Remember, I'm just saying selecting the control, but data owner is not responsible for implementing the control. So they are actually going to delegate this particular responsibility to data custodian to implement the control there. So these are the guys actually going to implement the control for data owner there. So suppose I'm selecting the encryption, and even in the encryption we have different I must say there are different category of encryption there. So like suppose that you are using for the data at rest, AES, advanced encryption standard, one of the algorithm for encrypting the data. And AES is available in 3 different flavor, I must say there. The encryption strength is actually 128-bit, the other encryption strength is 192-bit, and the another encryption strength is 256-bit. Although from the FIPS, it is recommended that you should be utilizing 256 AES 256-bit for the data at rest encryption there.
I'm gonna, sorry that I'm struggling. I mean, that I'm interjecting here a couple of times. I hope that's okay.
No, sure.
So you say that the data, you just said, I think, that the data owner will select the control. And I would say, in my experience, the data owner just classifies with a label, and that's it. They don't select the control.
That's what he said.
The control is linked to the class itself automatically. Is that correct or not?
No. Control is not defined by the data owner. That's what he said.
Is that okay? Then I misheard. I'm sorry.
Yes. Controls will be done by the CISO or the information security manager.
Yeah. What I'm saying, that they're actually going to consult with them there. See, the thing is, it is the data owner who actually know the impact. Okay, if it is going to compromise there, right? So if it is definitely going to compromise, it is actually going to create a negative issues for the organization there. So by connecting with the the information security guys there, they're actually going to help me to select the control there. Okay, what is actually best for them. And definitely after that, the delegation is actually going to done to the data custodian who is going to implement the control there. So definitely data owner most of the time, I must say there, is not that much of technical person who can actually select the control for me there. So if I'm going to let them select the control there, that one is actually going to, but yes, this is actually the responsibility of the ISM guys or the CISO guys there, who's actually going to select the control for me there, right? But that same thing has been approved by the data owner there, who's actually ultimately going to delegate this responsibility to custodian, who will be implementing the control here for me there.
Yeah. I agree with you. So the first is in that, like what we needed to do in Lecteron is we would first have to, as data owners, talk about this classification, agree on what control is needed for a certain class, and then the implementation. And then as an ultimate consumer of the data, we just classify, and the data custodian will be the one that makes sure that when you classify something, that the controls are in place to govern the data.
Correct. That is the same thing. We are actually going to utilize it there. Perfect. Yeah. So I was discussing about the different level. So I think now it is clear to you all that when I'm talking about the protection there, this is actually the level, and that multiple classification schema we might be facing there, like for the government organization or for the military firms there is a classification schema which has been actually suggested, or you can say that as an example has been taken from the NIST special publication 860. So when you see the guideline which is given there under the 860 there, which is actually for the data categorization there over and all there. So they had taken top secret is one of the categorization level, where if the data is compromised, you will be getting exceptionally grave damage. Okay, so that is the one of the keyword they're actually utilizing. If this classification level is secret, so that is another classification level we have, and if these data or the asset is compromised, we will be getting the grave damage there. If confidential data, which is the another level we have in the same field there, it will be actually going to provide you the damage if it is compromised there. And the similar thing for the other services, I must say there, I must put one more classification level, public. Definitely, if it is compromised, there is no any negative impact on the organization itself there. But yes, these are the different type of categorization level which we can actually utilize there for providing the protection to the data itself there. Okay, so first thing, we must know the overall impact, and accordingly I will be selecting the control. So if I'm going for the top secret, definitely the kind of control we need to implement for such data or for such assets there is going to be more than what we are going to implement for the secret. And definitely I have to compare with confidential if I'm going to implement the control for the secret as well there. So might be I can implement multiple control for the top secret data. Why? Because it required that much of protection there. And remember, overall control we have there, it is actually categorized into three different parts there. One is called as the administrative control, the another is called as the physical control, and the another is actually called as the logical, or you must say the technical control there. So if I'm having top secret data where the damage potential is highest, then definitely I can put multiple controls at the same time. Remember, when I'm talking about the control, each control which you're selecting might be having different set of actions there. Like if I'm selecting firewalls, firewall main goal is actually to prevent the traffic, malicious traffic there. And if I'm implementing the CCTV cams there, specifically with recording, it is actually going to help me to detect the incident there. So CCTV cam with recording is actually going to work as a detective control. But if I'm just implementing the CCTV cam there, which might not having any recording data available there, so it is going to work as a deterrent control, which is going to discourage the attempt of the user while doing some activity, specifically if he know that CCTV cam is placed in that particular room or might be in that particular premises there. So it is all and all depends on the damage potential, and that is what exactly going to select the that is actually going to be the factor of implementing the control for my organization there. So again, repeating, data owner is actually having the responsibility for the classification, and with support of the ISM guys, they're actually going to select the control there, and definitely the responsibility has been given to the data custodian. Now, I was actually trying to discuss one thing here, that we are going to classify the data. And after the classification, we have, I must say, at least two category here for now. One is the public data, which we can actually share. And one is the data which is confidential or might be secret or might be top secret. So I must say there, these are actually going to available under the classified data, and these are actually, the public is actually going to falls under the unclassified one. So for the classified data, definitely we have to put control, and for the public data, even if the control is not there, it is not going to create a problem. But availability should have to be maintained there. So I'm not saying that we need to implement confidentiality or integrity there, but availability must be there. Take an example, I'm putting some data for the public users, and that website is down from the last 2 day or from the last 3 day there. Definitely it is going to create a negative impact on in terms of organization reputation, and definitely it is going to overall impact the business as well there. So when we are classifying the data, I must take two category here: public and might be confidential, secret, or top secret. If you're having any category of data which belongs to this one, top secret, secret, and confidential, before you are putting this particular data onto the public cloud, you might have to think multiple times there. Because what about if the data is compromised from there? Because at the end of the day, you are sharing your classified data to third party who is going to process your data on your behalf there. So when I'm going to share my data to the AWS, Azure, or GCP, they will be doing the processing on behalf of me there. So definitely if they are processing and if they are having some concern there, take an example, one of the major concern we have onto the cloud is multi-tenant environment. And when I'm talking about the multi-tenant environment, it means multiple users from the different organization is using the same platform for their processing. So if proper isolation and segregation has been not given there, so I must say there on the public cloud, we are looking for one sure control, that is called isolation and definitely segregation. So when I'm saying segregation is all about implementing different container for different users. Just an example I'm taking here. So if I'm creating a different container for different users, it's a kind of segregation we have there. But if after creating the container, if you're assuming that your data is secure because I got a different container, okay, it's actually not guaranteeing you that you will be getting a proper control here. What exactly I'm looking for, not only the segregation, it means not only a proper separate container, but on top of that container, we must be having some set of control given there. And that control is actually going to verify who is the user who is coming to access this particular container and what action they are trying to do. And based on that, they're actually going to be restricted there. So if I'm the owner of that particular container, definitely I can access, but if other users are coming to access this particular container, definitely it's going to be denied there. So I must say there is a separate directory created for them there. So isolation is actually guaranteeing you the control over that container, but segregation is not. One of the simple example we can take, or you can say one of the simple technical example we can take here, segregation we are actually going to implement with the help of VLAN, virtual LAN there. But for the isolation in our cloud environment, we will be always utilizing the SDN, software defined networking there, which is going to provide the proper control over the segregated network there. But with VLAN, if you are assuming that you will be getting all set of control, but definitely it is not possible there. Why? Because first thing, there are multiple known attacks available there. And plus VLAN has been actually considered only for a single tenant environment. And if you're going to utilize in a multi-tenant environment for the isolation, definitely it is not recommended there. So segregation is never going to guarantee you for the proper security there, and this is the reason we are going to for the isolation there. So on a public cloud, if I'm putting any data, I have to actually check multiple times there how secure that particular environment is. So, and based on that only you are going to share the data with them. So specifically for the sensitive data, I must say top secret, secret, and confidential. I have to actually verify all the different controls, what they are offering, and based on that, or you must say there, based on assurance, you must be selecting that particular provider there. So when I'm selecting AWS, Azure, and GCP, I first be looking their third-party assessment reports there, which is going to help me decide whether I can go for that or not. This is the reason auditors are actually going to play a very crucial role here, specifically the third-party auditors who is actually having responsibility to audit the services on behalf of the users there. And based on that, they will be actually sharing you the report, which is going to help you understand the level of control they have and how much the controls are effective. And this is the reason there is a framework which we are actually utilizing, which has been given there by the Cloud Security Alliance. And that framework name is actually STAR. Security, Trust and Assurance Registry. Now we will be discussing more about this star in our upcoming section there. But yes, this is one of the assurance program we have, which is given there by the Cloud Security Alliance. So it is actually for the consumers. As a consumer, if I'm trying to trust on the providers there are some multiple validation report I require. And STAR is actually going to help in that particular case here.
And cloud providers, I mean, such as Azure, would sometimes have several versions of their cloud where one has a stricter control than another, such as, you know, Azure for the government versus Azure for the public, right? How do you paint that into this? Is that government instance or for Azure still a public cloud, or how do you see that?
Okay, so when you go for the Azure government instances there, or the same thing for the AWS or GCPs there.
Yeah.
So first thing, they are actually going to provide you the separate infrastructure in that particular case, which is definitely not going to share with the public users there, right? And they are going to, I must say that they are going to be the, totally isolated and dedicated infrastructure for you there, which is going to host your data. And, the security level is also going to be at the highest level there for them there. So there is a separate data center, I must say there for them, which is actually going to host the data. They're not only guaranteeing the logical isolation, but also the physical isolation. See, the logical isolation, we are also getting into the public.
Sorry, 1 second. So
Yeah, please.
does that still lie under public cloud categorization?
Yeah, definitely.
Azure?
Yeah, definitely. It is actually also lies into the public cloud there. Because when I'm saying public cloud, it means it is actually for multiple different entities there, right? And the another thing is, see, did I say it anytime that multi-tenant is actually one of the essential character of the cloud? No, right? Because definitely as per the NIST, essential characters, one of the essential characters is not the multi-tenant there. But yes, one thing is so sure that this particular cloud platform is going to utilize by multiple users there. Okay, and I must say they are public users there. Now because public cloud here in this particular case, like in case of Azure or AWS there, is restricted to utilized by only of the government entities there, because they are actually having the highest level of they require the highest level of security. So it is actually shared for users only there, but this time it is restricted to a certain group of users there.
Okay, got it. That makes sense. Yeah.
Okay.
So restricted for certain types of users. For example, different types of government agencies who want to, have Azure as their cloud provider, right?
Yeah, correct. So they are actually trying to process the data onto that particular platform, and that is what exactly they are going to provide to you there with proper security, proper isolation. You will be actually getting there. See, if you're looking for a dedicated infrastructure, even on the Azure or even on the AWS, so both of the platform, I must say that all of the cloud providers is also offering you there. But that in this particular case, the charges are actually going to be higher there. So suppose you are looking for a dedicated hardware for you there. So that one you will be getting from all of the provider there. The only thing they are going to charge you extra. But if you are utilizing the shared infrastructure, definitely for that, the costs are lower. Because if you're not utilizing that particular processor and the RAM there, definitely it is going to share by another consumer. But suppose you are a government entity, and if I'm going to share the same hardware to other users as well there, this may create a major issue to you there. So this is the reason we are not actually going to let them allow in the same platform on which I'm actually offering services to the public cloud there.
So when you say that a public instance is logically segregated and physically segregated, why don't you call it private?
Okay.
Yeah,
so
that is what actually I was wondering.
If you classify that, I think that will solve a lot of our doubts, I believe.
Okay, so see, right now the private cloud which I'm actually utilizing it there, this is actually dedicated for a certain entities there, correct? So if right now I'm going to utilize the term private within public, it might be confusing for you there. But yes, as we are going to progress, we understand some services there. which will help me to do the categorization properly. But yes, it is fair enough to say here that within public cloud we can build our own private infrastructure as well, okay, which is going to be dedicatedly available for you till the time you want to utilize that particular one there. So yes, I must say there within public cloud we can have our own private infrastructure as well. For that you have to pay more, and definitely it is actually not shared with some another users there. So I must say that yes, it is the private cloud only. But again, if I'm going to
So
utilize this,
when
yep,
you say private, you mean dedicated.
correct. If when I'm saying
Dedicated
right
to
now
one,
the private cloud,
dedicated to one customer or something.
Yes. Okay.
yes. So we have compute, we have storage, we have network. That is the three common basic services we are utilizing onto the cloud. So definitely that can be separate and segregated for a particular consumer
So
there.
one example I'll say, and can you tell me if I'm right or wrong? Now, say there are two government entities, A and B. Both of them are government entities, and both of them want, say, AWS, and they want to host there. So both of these guys would have their own independent instance or kind of a private cloud, which is like, just for their organization on the AWS, right? But those two would be separate within the public cloud of AWS.
Correct. They are going to be totally separate there as per the requirement there. Correct. So they can request for
But I
their
don't think,
private.
I think your question is, does that make them having a private cloud? And I don't think that is the conclusion.
See, at the end, this is the reason I told there that we still have to look for some more services to say about the private or public layer there. So I think it will be good that if we can stick it here right now to the public and private category there, as per what exactly we will be discussing there. But yes, as I told, that within public cloud we can create our own private infrastructure, but it doesn't mean that we are actually utilizing the private cloud there, because for the private cloud it is actually not going to shared by the another consumer at any moment of time there. But in case of public cloud, there might be the same infrastructure which you're right now utilizing. So for the 1 year, for the next 3 year, and for the next 10 year, until you are actually paying and utilizing that particular resource is dedicatedly available for you there. But the moment when you left, okay, it might be going to allocate it to the another consumers there,
Yeah.
right? So I must say,
Sorry, yeah, go on.
yeah. So I must say that this is not the proper definition of the private cloud, because in case suppose I'm going to share this particular data, and if some kind of lower level attacks can possible there, where I'm actually going to bypass the hypervisor and we can connect with the storage controller, and from there I can extract the data, it is still going to be the major issue for the consumers there. So this is not what the thing which we have in case of private cloud exactly there.
Okay. No, I'm sure you're gonna cover it in the future in the
Yeah,
next.
definitely. We will be sharing
Till
those.
then.
It
Okay.
is too early right now to talk
Sure.
about those low-level services there.
Go ahead.
Okay, so as I told that we need to do the categorization, and after the categorization, we will be deciding which data or the services I should be keeping onto the public cloud, because public cloud still we have some concern there. So specifically for the government entities, if they are trying to utilize any of the data onto the shared infrastructure, they have to think multiple times first there. Because if the isolation control has been bypassed there, in that case, this is actually going to create a major risk to the whole organization there. I must say that the whole country as well there, specifically if it is a government or military organization there. This is the reason we have to actually check it out whether I need to keep it going to create my own private cloud, because the thing is, if even one time if the attack is successful, the damage could be very much higher there, which itself is going to create a major issue for the whole country might be. So in this case, it is better to have the private cloud rather than going for the public cloud. Second example I must say take here, in some large firms, large organization, what will happen there, they have to actually compile with multiple regulations, multiple standard. So the overall cost for making it compliant is also going to be much more higher there. So, whatever we are saving on the public cloud, we might be spending lots of just to make that particular infrastructure compliant. So it is better to utilize our previous investments and make it or configure it in a way so it is going to provide me all the features which the cloud is actually offering me. So in this case, we can also go for the private cloud. But
Well,
the major
yeah,
reason,
sorry.
yeah, please.
No, so I was going to, sorry, but I want to let you finish. I want to give an example from my past that I think works.
Sure,
Go on.
sure. So the major reason we are going for the private cloud is actually to make my data isolated to a certain infrastructure only, and we are under the total control of making the decision about the governance, making the decision about the risk management, making the decision about the compliance there. So I must say that I wanted a proper control over the GRC, which is actually not the case with the public cloud we have there. Because if I'm going on to the public cloud, the governance decision, I'm not the only person who can actually make as a organization owner. I have to always rely on Azure or AWS. So suppose I'm selecting AES 192-bit of encryption. Now I have to check whether public cloud providers are offering me AES 192-bit of encryption or not. If it is not the case, I have to actually either adjust myself as per the public cloud services offering there, or might be I will be moving toward the another provider who is actually going to let me provide the services there, and might be again the last option we have is the private cloud only there. So governance, risk management, and compliance, that is the three component which we require total control over this one. But in the case of public cloud, it is actually shared. And because it is shared, we always have a reliance on the public cloud provider there. So before I'm making any decision, I have to also check it from the public cloud provider side, whether it is feasible from their side or not. If it is not feasible from their side, definitely I have to make the commensurate changes there, and accordingly I can only implement there. So on public cloud, on private cloud, actually, we are having total control over this particular three component. And basically, because of that, I must say there, the data, asset, and any kind of confidential information which you have there, it's actually total under my control. So if you require a proper assurance over the asset and over the information there, private cloud is actually going to be the best option. Yes, the only thing is the cost. Because when we are going on to the public cloud, the major reason for going for the public cloud is the flexibility of services offering there, and one of the major reason is the cost as well. There we are paying only for the resource, we are actually utilizing it there. So definitely I can preserve some cost, and I can actually allocate that particular overall saving to my core goal of the organization there. So, but in case of private cloud, you have to actually invest. So definitely if I'm having a budget, and if I'm having some sensitive information, I should be keeping it on the private cloud only instead of going on the public cloud. But when I'm
Hey,
saying the
Can I,
control of,
can I give
yeah,
an
please.
example to make
Yeah,
it concrete? At least for me, it was concrete. I
yeah,
used
sure.
to be responsible for the network infrastructure of the European Space Agency, and I was on the shall I call it the side of the business that would use things on the. We would go to the internet, we would go on the public cloud, but the European Space Agency also communicates with satellites and with all those things up in the sky, and everything that is all the people that work on the rockets and on the satellites are on a separate network that is air gapped from anything else. That means that everything, all their machines cannot reach the internet, cannot reach anything. Now, those people, those, maybe 1,000 people that work in that space may also want the flexibility of a cloud solution. And you can, I believe, actually from Microsoft buy a rack that contains all the servers and the software that act completely like Azure acts. And if you connect to those servers, you have your version of Azure in your building, and you can completely leave that disconnected from the internet. You leave those servers completely disconnected from the internet, and still, if someone wants to spin up a server, create a VM, add a key vault, you can still do it because those services then run inside that bunch of machines that are not even connected to the internet in any place or shape. Is that an example?
So does that become, okay, the example for private cloud, okay.
Yeah, that correct. This is actually the one example I must say there. And the example which the BART has given there, because BART what exactly utilized the name that it is very much similar infrastructure which right now we are utilizing onto the Azure there. It means that any services we have which is actually going to provide the same look and feel there, which I'm actually utilizing onto the Azure cloud. So yes, we have. So we have the Microsoft Azure stack. So if you want, actually you can configure your own private cloud, which is very much similar. It is very much same look and feel we are getting into the Azure there. And at any moment of time, if you feel that I required some services, okay, from the public cloud side as well, it means I will be configuring my own private cloud first, okay, and then at any moment of time, if you feel that you need to acquire some services from the public cloud there, now this Azure cloud stack is actually going to let you do very easily there. All you have to just connect your subscription with your private cloud, and you can get the services from the public cloud in a controlled manner. Only those services which you wanted to allocate to the private cloud there, that one is going to be given. And this is actually going to create the hybrid cloud infrastructure there, which is actually our third deployment model there. Okay, so definitely in case of hybrid cloud, we are trying to merge this private cloud and the public cloud there. And normally, because of some disaster, we require this hybrid cloud option there. And not only that, even if you have the shared different set of data on which you don't have that same level of security requirement, in this case hybrid cloud is going to be the best option for you there. So when I say private cloud, it means sensitive data. When I'm saying public cloud, till now it is means the non-sensitive data which I can actually place onto the public cloud. Even if it is compromised, okay, it is not going to create a major risk to your organization. So you're actually doing the risk assessment.
I kind of find that definition weird, because a lot of public clouds are used for very sensitive data, because as long as the controls are in place and I don't think that
No,
everyone who needs
actually,
sensitive data needs a private
yes.
cloud. I kind of fight. I don't like that way you painted that. Sorry.
No. Actually, I'm using this particular terms now. There's a reason there. See, what I'm saying that right now, the best way of doing the categorization is actually to put the sensitive and non-sensitive till now there, based on our discussion there, correct? But does it mean that the whole infrastructure the Azure has spinned up onto the onto their infrastructure just to manage the non-sensitive data there? It doesn't make sense there, correct? So what exactly is happening there? So till now, when you go and communicate with the users there, they are always having a concern that because they are actually keeping the data onto the third party cloud infrastructure, so definitely the concern is there. What about if the isolation control is broke up? What about the segregation is not there? What about the encryption or the other solution has been not provided by them there? So these are all the concerns there. Now the public cloud providers are actually coming with lots of different solutions there, which is actually giving you assurance that you can keep your sensitive data there and you can process it over and all there. But at the same time, what I'm saying that you need to do the risk assessment. It is the damage potential which is actually going to let you decide whether you can keep the data onto the public cloud or private cloud. See, even if you're keeping the data onto your private cloud, it doesn't mean that your data is actually going to be properly protected there, because the amount of protection which the public cloud provider is offering you, it's not might be very much feasible to you there, because of the cost constraint, because of the resource constraint, another thing. In case of public cloud, we are getting lots of expertise and staffs there who's actually managing your data on behalf of them, on behalf of the customer there. So their main goal is to make sure that every control is to the place and up to the mark place with all of the standard and the compliance standard followed there. So they are actually investing a good amount of resource and the money just to make your data secured there. So when I'm saying public cloud, definitely I'm just using a certain category, that sensitive and non-sensitive data, and it is because of right now the nature of the public cloud. Some of the features what we had discussed, they are based on that there. But public cloud provider is not only for non-sensitive data. We can manage it there, but again, it is the way you are structuring the logical infrastructure. Take an example. I am the infrastructure as a guy who is actually managing the public cloud, public infrastructure there. It is the way which I had configured the infrastructure that won't decide whether my data is going to be secure or not there, right? And definitely the same case with the private cloud as well. The only thing which is actually mainly differentiating them is the GRC, governance, risk and compliance there. On public cloud, we don't have the total control, and in private cloud, we are the sole owner of the GRC there. We will decide where the data will replicate. We will decide what is the risk management technique and the risk management framework I'm utilizing, and we will decide what are the compliance standard we have there. Does it make sense?
Yes, to me, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so, but again, the term which I'm actually right now utilizing, it is based on the discussion there, and that is the reason. But definitely, as we are going to progress, we will be very much clear that which cloud deployment model is actually going to best for us there, because it is, we are still to discuss the controls what those providers are actually offering us. And remember, the whole book, the CCSP book, is actually going to cover the aspect of public cloud there, because this is one of the most I must say the popular deployment model we have onto the cloud there. And after that, hybrid is actually the second most one, I must say, the popular one. So in case of hybrid cloud, first thing, it is actually the shared responsibility. Shared responsibility among the consumer and shared responsibility onto the provider itself there. Now here, I must say that if you have sensitive data, you're definitely keeping it onto the private cloud, and we have non-sensitive data, I'm right now keeping it onto the public cloud there. Okay, but sometime what will happen there, that, like, take an example, I'm having a private cloud infrastructure and I'm running out of resource. Okay, and because I'm running out of resource, I have to immediately make sure that resources is available in my private cloud infrastructure there, so I can spin up and I can manage the services on that hardware. But what about if I require, definitely on immediate basis there? Is it the feasibility we have under the private cloud there? So I can say, yeah, sometime it is, and most of the time not. It is no, it is not there. So we have an option that we can actually spin our services via private cloud to the public cloud as well there. It means we can actually utilize public cloud option as a business continuity option as well, or I must say their disaster recovery option as well there. So whenever you are running out of resource in private cloud, you can spin up your resources onto the public cloud, and this is actually going to create a BCDR situation there for us there. So business continuity, and for the disaster recovery purpose, we can go for the hybrid cloud there. So whenever you're running out of resource, you can utilize public cloud provider as one of the option there. The second condition where I can actually go for the hybrid cloud, let's take an example, you're keeping some sensitive data onto the public cloud there, but you don't want the data to be accessed by your provider. So for that, what are you going to do? You're going to do the encryption. So you're going to encrypt the data, and then you are going to place the data onto the public cloud side there. But if the encryption key is under the control of cloud providers, definitely there is a risk where the cloud provider can access your data. I must say the cloud provider employees can access the data there, because this is also one of the risks which has been raised by the Cloud Security Alliance in their white paper there. And definitely, if it is a risk where the cloud employees can actually access your data there, so in this case we have to have a certain control place, so even they cannot access my data. And in this case, what we can do there, we are actually configuring our own KMS server, key management server, onto our private cloud, or might be, I can say, in our private infrastructure. And whenever it is required to access the data, it is always going to commit this particular key to the public cloud side. Definitely, there is a risk of unavailability there, because if the link between your premises and the public cloud is down, you're not able to fetch the key from the KMS server there, and definitely you cannot commit it onto the public cloud to make it ready for the processing there. So this is the another example where I'm actually putting my sensitive service here, KMS service, key management service, which is actually managing the encryption key there in my private infrastructure, but the sensitive encrypted data is actually placed onto the public cloud. But because of this segregation of duty principle I'm actually following here, this is making sure that even if someone is having access over your data, which you can say the encrypted data, they cannot access it because they're not able to fetch the key from the KMS server there because of the permission level there. So this is also one of the case where we can actually go for the hybrid cloud there. So like that, we have multiple example of the hybrid cloud, but yes, these are some of the best examples we can actually take it there for the hybrid cloud. All in all, in hybrid cloud, we are actually trying to do a mix where we are going to utilize the public cloud and definitely the private cloud. So remember, like private cloud, we have one option there that is called community cloud. So when I'm saying hybrid cloud, it doesn't mean that only the public and private. It could be public and community as well there, which is actually going to merge together and definitely going to provide you the services there. So this hybrid cloud, I must say, is a composition of two or more cloud that remain unique entities but are bound together by standardized, or I must say there, proprietary technology that enable data and application portability there. So this is the another option we have there in case of deployment model you are going for there. So till now what we had seen, the public cloud, which is actually available for all of the users there, private cloud, which is restricted for a particular user or group there, and we have the hybrid cloud, which is actually available for mix of the customer there. I must say there, here I'm actually going to utilize public and private cloud, both of the features there, and definitely it is totally depends on the data. You're going to keep that data in relevant places there. So that is the three options we have. But apart from that, we have one more deployment model here. And I must say there, this particular deployment model is the community cloud there. So as per the NIST definition, even that one too is one of the cloud deployment model we have there. Now, cloud deployment model community cloud is very much similar to the private cloud there. The only difference here is that in case of community cloud, we are going to create a private cloud infrastructure, but this private cloud infrastructure is shared among some known group of users. When I'm saying known group of users, it means, okay, when I'm saying known group of users, it means, take an example. I am actually trying to have a proper services there, which is related to some financial organization there. Okay. And because I'm having some more financial organization who's actually looking for the similar kind of services there. So we are going to open a data center, and that data center is actually going to share among them there. And they are actually going to bind it with a contract between them. So I can say customer A, customer B, and customer C's are actually going to utilize this particular private cloud. And they are going to have their own instance of services running onto the running on this particular private cloud. But because it is shared among a group of users who is having common governance requirement, who is having common risk management requirement, and who is also having some common standards and the regulations to follow there. So this case is actually going to be the best suitable for them there. Okay, so
we work a lot with managed service providers or managed security service providers, and they sometimes, I think, have what you would call a community cloud, whereby their end customers all can, for instance, access some information about their network security or dashboards and whatever. But I'm sure that those customers then also use the public cloud or do some hybrid.
Yeah, definitely. They are also listing, and as I told you that it is a kind of private cloud only there. The only thing is actually shared among a group of customers there, and which is actually we are aware about. So as a user, as a customer A, I'm aware about who else apart from me is utilizing this particular private cloud. And there is
Okay,
one.
then our MSSPs may not fit that model. Okay.
Yeah. And in this case, the customer A is aware about, like, we are actually falls in under a contractual agreement that how exactly we can actually utilize this particular private cloud, what are the acceptable users behavior on this particular cloud, and everything. It means we can put control on all of the customers there. In case of public cloud, this is not the case, because public cloud is actually shared among multiple consumer, and as a consumer A, I cannot put control over consumer B what exactly the activity they can do over the private over their cloud infrastructure. I cannot let them do control their activity there. Simply, I can say that if they are doing some lower level scanning there, I cannot stop them. Okay, in case of public cloud, because they are free to do. Definitely, it is the cloud provider who can actually input some control if they feel that they are doing some malicious activity there. But as a customer A, I cannot put any control to them there. But in case of community cloud, this is the case we can actually put there. So I must say there, all of the consumers in case of community cloud is the equal stakeholders for that particular private cloud. It may be or may not be. I must say it may be managed by any one of the customer entities users, or it might be managed by some third party providers, that whole cloud. So I must say that I'm going to outsource the responsibility to manage the private cloud under the community cloud to a group of users there, or to a third organization. In this case, is actually called as the hosted cloud there. So we have this 4 deployment model: public cloud, hybrid cloud, private cloud, and community cloud there. And you must know the proper difference between them, specifically for the examination purpose as well, definitely for your own consideration. But again, it's very, very much required that you must know that the exact difference between these deployment model for the examination purpose as well.
I have a question.
Yeah, please.
Can you give an example for community cloud?
A very simple example which we can take it here for that is the gaming community, which is actually very much, see, when I'm saying cloud there, it means we are actually utilizing some services there over the internet, and we can actually utilize it there. So one of the simple example we can take, so gaming, the users who actually love games there, actually going to utilize these servers there, which is placed on the internet there, and anyone can actually utilize. But again, it is actually, I must say, that restricted to the users who love games there. But if you,
That's strange. That's strange. That's, to me, still feels public because anyone can subscribe to it.
yeah, correct.
I think I have an example that to me works. That is, quite often hospitals will create a community cloud whereby 4 or 5 or 6 hospitals use the same, cloud infrastructure, and they share the resources between 5 hospitals, but that is then built just for those 5 hospitals, and the 5 hospitals agree on what software they use or what controls they have in place, what levels of document classification. And since they're all healthcare providers, they basically can enforce that they all follow the same rules. Does that make sense? I actually in my past built I didn't know it was called a community cloud, but we built a community cloud very much in that context.
Yeah. And I must say one more thing here, that community cloud is very much similar to the private cloud. So when you're trying to take an example of the community cloud, you can actually check only the private cloud examples, but it should have to be shared with some multiple group of users there. Because private community cloud is very much similar to the private cloud only there. The only thing is actually it is shared among the multiple consumers there, and that is what it is making difference. So we have multiple vendors who is actually providing the support of the private cloud, which can be shared among the multiple consumers there with the proper isolation. Like with IBM cloud, these are the options available there, which we can actually take an example. Yes, very much similar to Bart what had said there. The hospitality departments are actually going to utilize such kind of things there. Then financial organizations are actually creating such shared infrastructure, which is actually shared among them, which is definitely isolated. Plus, they're actually only dedicatedly for their own use there. So these are some of the simple examples we can take under that. Okay, so we have the deployment model, and in 5-4-3 rule, I think now we are okay with this 5 and 4 model. Is it okay for you all, or any question you have still? So I think we can proceed, correct?
Yeah.
Sorry, when you're saying 543, can you just repeat once
Five
more?
is five essential characters of the cloud, which we had discussed in our last session there. You know,
Okay,
I
okay,
did.
Brome. 4
Yeah,
is the
correct.
4 type of
okay.
clouds: private,
Okay.
public, community, and hybrid. Now we are going to see the 3 model.
Yeah. So we had seen the deployment model, and now we have the 3, and this time is actually this
Service model. Okay.
service model. Correct. So service model. So when I'm saying service model, okay, definitely this time I'm actually going to categorize the cloud services based on the foundational, cloud services, what they are actually offering me. And based on that category is there. So service model will simply define what kind of services which I'm actually trying to utilize onto the cloud there. And based on that, this category over and all has been given there. Okay. So we have at least this particular 3 basic service model here we have there, and this service model decide what kind of services you are trying to utilize there onto the cloud there. So we have 3 service model here. One is the infrastructure as a service, and when I'm saying infrastructure service, we are actually going to utilize the complete infrastructure, and I must say there is the logical infrastructure there. Remember the 2 type of infrastructure we have here this time on the cloud. One is the logical and one is the physical. Physical infrastructure, specifically on the public cloud, is completely managed by the cloud provider. Like in case of Azure, definitely it is the Microsoft who is going to manage the complete physical infrastructure for you there. But the logical infrastructure in case of Azure is going to created by you. Now, when I'm saying logical infrastructure, it means the network, compute, and the storage. That is the 3 low-level services we are going to use always there. Compute, which is going to do the processing for you, and under the compute we have the processor and the RAM. We have a storage, and definitely in the storage we are looking for different set of a storage there. Like when I'm going to take a simple example there, we are looking for 2 kind of a storage there. One is the magnetic backed hard drives there, which is going to store my data, and the another is the solid state disk, which is actually going to do the faster IOPS for me there, input output per second. And in case of network, we are trying to transfer the data from one point to another point. Now, how exactly you're looking to transfer the data? Based on that, the network services I'm going to utilize there. Like it is just only to connect multiple virtual machines with each other. So might be a virtual network or the VPC is actually enough for us there. Okay. But in case if you're trying to connect your on-prem environment with cloud, then in that case, you might be looking for some VPN services as well there. So it is totally depends on the requirement. Based on that, the network infrastructure, I should be configuring it there onto the onto the public cloud only there. So in case of infrastructure service, we are going to utilize the lower level services of to the cloud there. So I must say infrastructure as a service offer access to resource pools there, and I must say that this resource pool is actually offering me the fundamental computing infrastructure, which is offering me the compute, network, and storage. So I can directly utilize those configurations, okay, which is actually logically presented to you. Remember, after installing the hypervisor on top of the hardware, you are now having the logical, or you can say the abstracted version of the hardware, and that abstracted version of the hardware is actually presented to you onto the cloud management console. So now how exactly you are going to utilize it is totally on you, because you have infrastructure as service and you are the total owner of that one, and you are the one who is going to decide how to present the storage to the consumer, how to present the compute instances to the user. So that is totally under your control there. So this is what exactly this particular infrastructure as a service will do for you. So I must say infrastructure service is going to offer you the resource pool of fundamental computing infrastructure, which is compute, network, and storage. And definitely you can configure the whole infrastructure as per your requirement there. So in case of infrastructure, I should say there, so suppose this is my physical hardware. So this is my physical hardware. On top of that, we are having hypervisor. On top of that, we are going to have now the virtual hardware. And now with the help of API, I'm going to present this particular console, or you can say these resources, over the management console to the user. So I must say that this is the management plane for the users through which he can actually interact. Now provided responsibilities to manage all of these things for you. So even in infrastructure service, these all services is always going to manage by the provider only there for you there. I'm talking about the example of public cloud right now, not the private cloud. And on top of that, now it's your responsibility to build everything. So suppose you require proper, processing over the data. And when I'm saying processing, I must say all of the things here. Data processing. So I can, for the processing, I require the processor and the RAM, the storage and the other things there. So I must say I'm going to create, might be a virtual machine, VM. On top of that VM, I will be installing some operating system. On top of that, I must be installing some necessary integrated development environment, or might be some tools through which I can actually present the application on top of that particular stack. So I must say all the dependent services there. And finally, I'm having my application on top of that running there. And then it is going to offer to the consumer via the network to the user. So I can say here the consumer is now managing these particular infrastructure there. This is actually the logical infrastructure, and this one is actually the physical infrastructure of the cloud, which is actually going to manage by the provider itself there. So this is because here we are responsible for configuring and definitely managing it. So even for the security, it is the consumer only who is responsible to make sure it is configured properly and it is presented to the user, or you can say to the end user correctly there, so they can access services securely. So the responsibility of security is totally under you there right now. Now we will be discussing more granular part of that particular infrastructure there as we are going to progress there. But yes, till now, what you need to understand that in infrastructure service, we are going to build the logical infrastructure, which is going to composed of compute, network, and storage, everything, okay, which we require there. The another service model we have is the PaaS, platform as a service. Now, what we had seen in this particular logical infrastructure in case of IaaS, that we are building the VM, we are building the OS, or you can say installing the OS, and then services, and then the application. But in case of PaaS, even this VM, OS, and services, or you can say the necessary ID, integrated development environment, and software development kits are actually going to offered by the provider. So on top of that, in case of PaaS, even up to this layer is actually going to manage by the provider only. It means as a consumer, I am going to manage only this particular application. So I have to first check it. I have to check it out the platform on which I'm going to host the application, whether this platform is compatible for my application. If it is not, definitely I have to make some changes there as per the requirement of the platform. If I require this platform to be utilized only, or might be I will be first considering this platform, and then only based on that I will be going for the development. This is the reason we require a proper training. Okay, we require a proper training of the cloud infrastructure or the cloud platform on which I'm going to work in out there. Because if I'm not aware about, might be my software or the application is not compatible with the platform on which I wanted to run it there. Normally, providers are offering you all the standard tool, which is actually make it compile and work very easily there. But yes, if you are going to utilize some older frameworks and the older technology there, and if you are trying to utilize here onto the cloud infrastructure, it may not work. So before you are going for the development, specifically any of the application which is going to work onto the cloud, you have to check their platform, whether it is compatible as per your requirement. And if it is, then only you can go for that development there. Okay. So in case of platform as a service, I must say provider is going to offer me all the platform on which I just need to host my services, and it will be going to work immediately there. And because underlying infrastructure is going to completely managed by the provider, I don't have to worry about the operating system, their patching and other things there, because that one is going to completely managed by the provider. So the only thing I have to take care, the application security. I have to make sure that application is built properly with all the integrated security feature, plus the whole life cycle of the application also managed by you only there. So in case of
Would,
platform, just
sorry, would a
yeah, please.
platform as a service would you also, as a consumer, be involved in the network, for instance, or not?
Yes, in some type, or I must say that yes, sometime we are actually going to, because in some instances, in some provider is actually offering you the isolated network feature for the platform as a service as well there. So yes, we have such control also given there, but not always. Okay, not always there. So if it is totally depends on the kind of plan you are purchasing there with platform as a service, based on that, those lower level access you might be getting. So if you're looking for some isolated network on the cloud, so based on the subscription plan, you can actually utilize it there.
Thanks.
Okay. Right. So we have the platform as a service, and as I told that the whole platform is actually going to build up by the provider, and I just need to host my application on top of that, and that's it. We are ready to go there. So this is the platform as a service. But what about if even that this application is also going to manage by the provider? This application is also going to manage by the provider. It means the complete stack. And in this case, the data and the logical control which is exposed by the provider is I'm actually going to manage there. So we have the third service model, which is called as the software as a service. Now, in case of software as a service, the whole complete stack here is going to manage by the provider. So the only thing I'm responsible for is to just make sure that your data, what you are processing over the software as a service, is having adequate control, which is exposed by the provider to you there. Remember, if in software as a service, provider is not exposing any of the control for you, you cannot provide the protection. So you have to actually check it out very precisely whether the relevant controls are available there for the protection, because everything is managed by the provider. We don't need to take care of the operating system. We don't need to take care of the software, even the licensing and everything there. So in software as a service, it is actually based on the number of users you are actually going to pay to your provider there. One of the simple example we can take is the Microsoft Office 365, which is the example of software as a service. It is the based on number of user you're actually going to pay them annually there. And definitely what subscription you are purchasing under the SaaS, based on the cost, is actually going to vary. This is a subscription which will decide what are the security features and what are the functionality you will be getting under the Office 365 there. So data, remember, is completely managed by you only in any of the service model, whether you're managing the IaaS, PaaS or SaaS, because you know how exactly you need to handle there. Plus some functionalities which only you know how it needs to be configured is also going to be. Let's take an example in the software as a service. Under the Office 365 solution, we have one solution available there that is called Exchange. So Exchange is basically an application which is going to do the email services for you there. So email configuration, you can do it here. But how exactly this Exchange will route the mail to the internet, how exactly the mails will be dropped on your mailbox, these things you can control there by taking their options there. So we have multiple options there under the Office 365. We can actually select that particular option. Around that we can actually configure. Not only that, nowadays they're actually offering me several solutions onto the console, like DLP solution. We have the compliance solution there according to GDPR, and you can actually do the classification and selection of the control based on the categorization only there. Encryption solution they are also offering me on top of that. So nowadays they had started investing more and more resources onto the software as a service platform, so you can have a better control over your data there. But I must say 2 years back, it was very, less services we have there, specifically security wise, to handle it there. There is one more thing which you need to understand here, because in software as a service, everything managed by the provider. It means in terms of GRC, governance, risk and compliance, we are always relying on to the provider. Okay, for the governance, risk and compliance, we are always relying on the provider. And because here we are always relying on to the provider, what exactly the major thing we have to check it out here, that this time, okay, if I am not having a proper contract with my provider, the control which I'm looking for might be, I will not get in case I require. So let's take an example. If there is an incident in your organization, suppose some sensitive data has been sent by one of your employees outside the organization there, and now you are trying to investigate on that particular case to get the proper evidence there. Now, do the provider is actually offering you such lower level logs so you can prove whether that particular data has been actually sent by the user? Okay, so do we have any provision for such things there? And if it is not, okay, definitely how can you get the compensation for that particular one? I must say there. So I must say there, in case of software as a service, it is the initial contract which will define how exactly you will be getting the security features or other controls which is not, can be possible within software as a service there, like getting the logs security related there. In case I must say there, I'm looking for some more control there, like suppose I'm trying to integrate some third party encryption feature there, so do we have such provision available there? So it is the initial contract which is actually going to define the overall picture with your cloud services there. If you fail to do that, okay, definitely in the future it is going to be a major concern for you there itself. So this is the reason it is the contract, and plus because we are going on the software as a service, overall performance is also going to be decided by your initial due diligence there. So how precisely you're doing the due diligence over the provider, and you're inspecting all of their services there, based on that only you should have to go for that particular one. So software as a service, I must say, is the best example of the negotiated contract, because if I fail to do that, I'm not having any option to get any kind of log or any kind of relevant data there, which is actually required during the any kind of incident there, right?
Well, you can, but you have to make sure that you can. I mean, I was a little bit confused when you said the governance, the GRC is the role of the provider, maybe 10 minutes ago, in software as a service, because I would argue that it's still a shared responsibility, like, that example of Exchange, the configuration of the Exchange data loss prevention rules or encryption rules are still governed by the user, the consumer, and not by the provider, correct?
Okay, go on.
Well, I'm just saying,
Yep.
it's a shared responsibility, not the I was just like, I don't think it's a responsibility of the provider. The GRC is not the responsibility of the provider. It's at best a shared responsibility between the provider and the consumer.
Yes, see, if I'm going on the cloud side there definitely it is actually the shared responsibility in all of the cases there. But at the same time, I had already said that particular point, that if the control is exposed by the provider, then only you can implement that control on your side there. Like in case of Exchange, all the Exchange related settings has been given there by the provider. So definitely it is you who will decide how to route the mail from your inside network to outside. Okay, how exactly the spam filtering will work for you there. Because definitely if these settings are not under my control, how can I manage my mailboxes there? See, Exchange
Yeah, right,
software is
exactly.
installed by the
Yes,
provider. Yeah. So
I agree.
yeah, correct. So Exchange software is actually installed by the provider, but the mailbox we have to create. If they are not providing me options to create the mailbox, how can I provide, and how can I allocate the mailboxes to the user there. So definitely these settings as a consumer we need to define, but these softwares are pre-installed by them. And if I'm looking for some lower level logs, okay, related to Exchange, because Exchange is actually installed in their premises. So if I'm looking for the lower level logs, okay, are we having this particular option? Because I'm not managing the hardware, or might be the virtual machine on which the Exchange is installed. So are we getting any logs there? Those lower
Well,
level logs?
we can, yes. I mean, but we have to activate them, yes.
No. If you don't have the contract signed, you won't be able to.
But that's, I know, but it depends on how the question is asked. If you don't have an agreement, I agree. But in many cases with software as a service, you can, through API or whatever, get to those lower level logs, yes.
By default, you
Yes.
don't get. Yeah,
I'm
you need.
not saying by default, I agree. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely after establishing a contract, we can get it there. And this is the reason I'm saying that software as a service, we have to precisely do the due diligence there. What option I require, okay, and based on that, I will be actually discussing with my provider what are the features available there to get these information from your side, and
Yeah.
how much you are charging me, and everything you have to actually establish it clearly. Suppose I'm new to this exchange, or some softwares which is actually offered under the software as a service. Might be I'm not the good person who's actually going to set and who can check the contract in that particular case there, because this is the initial contract who will decide the big picture with your cloud provider at the end of the day there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so this is what we have there in the service model. So now I think we all are clear about this 5-4-3 rule there. So under the 5-4-3 rule, not what we had discussed, the 5 essential characters of the cloud, 4 deployment model, and the service model definitely there. So if you require more control over your cloud, I must say that you can go for the IaaS, infrastructure as a service, because you are actually the owner of all of the services from the scratch there, and you are going to manage everything from the scratch there. You will be configuring your own server, you will be configuring your own network, you will be configuring your own storage. And on top of that, you are going to install the required services. So suppose you are looking for Exchange software for the mailing purpose, you can simply build your own infrastructure, and you can install it and configure it as per your requirement, and you can place the firewall at the relevant places to filter the traffic there. So everything is actually under your control there. But in case of platform as a service, we are actually moving away from the uh, from the consumer, I can say. I'm actually providing more control to the provider. And in case of SaaS, definitely I'm providing most of the control to the provider there. The only thing which I'm going to manage is the software which is given there to me and their related settings there. So again, this is the reason the governance control I require more in case of SaaS there. Now remember why I'm saying more there. I must say that I have to actually check the GRC component more onto the SaaS side there, because most of the things is going to manage by the provider. But in IaaS, because we are the whole having the whole responsibility, so we can decide more precisely what controls, what policy, what governance things we were actually going to select there, and based on that the services can be configured and managed by me there itself, right? So this is what we have the initial, and so actually it's a very important topic, I must say, there from the first chapter, definitely in terms of understanding, and definitely in terms of examination, from the examination perspective as well there. So you must be very much clear on those particular topics which we had discussed till now there. On a higher level, I must say there that which cloud is actually going to be trusted and which cloud is actually going to be untrusted there. So we have 4 overall deployment model. So if I'm taking the example of public cloud, so I'm talking about from the higher level. So if I'm saying the public cloud, so first point I should say here that in public cloud, infrastructure, okay, is owned by. So this is the first thing. Second, infrastructure is managed by, and the infrastructure located where exactly. And now the one more component I must be utilizing, and that is called as who is accessing and who is consuming. Now I must say there consumable by, or you can say accessible. Based on this particular three data, or you can say three key points there. So public cloud infrastructure owned by third party. This is the first attribute. Infrastructure managed by third party. But here, remember, here we are not actually not defining one thing here is whether it is logical or physical, because if you're going to do this further division, so it could be you as well there based on the infrastructure or platform or the software as a service there, based on the service model, I must say there. Infrastructure is located, so definitely public cloud is not in my location, so I must say off premises. Okay, and because of that, because of those features, I must say there, this is accessible and consumed mostly by the untrusted people there. Okay, this is also like in case of public cloud, we know that we are not aware about who else apart from me is managing the cloud or using the cloud there. And definitely in this case, I must say there, it's a untrusted model we have there based on this particular data on the high level. In case of private cloud, when I go for there, if you are going to
Can you explain the word untrusted? Because that could be, I could understand that one of two ways. I think I know which one, but I'd love for you to explain that word.
See, the fourth point which I'm actually discussing it here is actually accessible and consumed by. So when I'm saying accessible and consumed by, so public cloud is normally accessible and consumed by untrusted. The reason I'm saying untrusted, because we are not clear about who else apart from me is using that particular cloud infrastructure or the platform there. And definitely if I'm not sure there, so how can I actually trust on that particular provider there, or how can I trust on the services which is actually going to be there? So this is the reason I actually say there that accessible and consumed by the untrusted people itself there, because we are not clear about who else apart from me who's actually managing this particular cloud or using this particular cloud there. Is it clear?
Yeah.
In case of private, or you can also keep here community, because community is the same, private cloud only. The only difference is community is shared among multiple group of users whom I'm actually aware about. So in case of private cloud, infrastructure is either owned by organization, it means it is owned by you, or might be it is consumed by third party. Now when I'm saying third party, it means you can have your cloud infrastructure which is completely owned by some third party as well. Okay, but you are the sole owner of that particular private cloud or community cloud, because you are the one who is deciding what are the controls, what are the servers, what are the services, and definitely who is going to manage that cloud itself there. So that is totally under your control. So I must say that governance, risk, and compliance is totally under my control there. So the same thing here. In this case, if it is managed by third party and owned by third party, in this case, I must say there that it is actually called as the hosted cloud there. Infrastructure is managed by either organization or might be third party, and infrastructure is located either on premises or off premises there. Okay, but in both of the cases, because we are actually under the control and we know apart from me who else is using this particular cloud, so I must say that it is actually the going to accessible by the trusted people only there. Okay, so this is the trusted cloud because of these particular attributes there. And in case of hybrid, it is going to be trusted and untrusted both, because we know that in case of hybrid, we're actually utilizing the cloud with another consumer. It means I'm utilizing the public cloud and private cloud both, and definitely it is actually shared among both of the users. So in base of the cases, I can say there it is actually trusted and untrusted both. Now remember, this is actually at the highest level, but definitely there are so much things we have. So if I'm going into the lower level, we have so many different services, so many different controls, which is actually sometimes makes this particular statements wrong there. But yes, if you're going to consume, because if you have some sensitive data, non-sensitive data, private data there, at the higher level, if I'm communicating to the management, so this is one picture actually I can draw in front of them. Why exactly the private, public, and hybrid cloud is actually the trusted or untrusted itself there. Remember, when I'm saying management, or you can say infrastructure managed, okay, so it is actually going to include the governance, operations, security, and compliance, all of them there. So we have to actually keep all of these particular things in our mind there. One more thing, that there is a term we are actually utilizing that is called as SPI tier. SPI tier. The reason I'm utilizing this particular term SPI tier, because normally the consumer are actually going to prefer first the software as a service there. The reason is the cost and definitely the manageability. We will be getting the expertise from the provider. We will be getting the with less cost here. We are getting proper licenses from there. So I can say everything is mostly managed by the provider along with the security there. So this is the first layer. Second, after that, we can go for the platform as a service. And then finally, we can go for the infrastructure service. Remember, if you are looking for more control, infrastructure as a service is the best option we have there. Yes, there's sometime the question can be asked there, what are the components actually falls under the infrastructure service? Okay, so on a higher level, I must say there that in infrastructure service, we have the physical facilities. On top of that, we have the hardware. On top of that, we have the abstraction layer. Okay, on top of that, we have the core connectivity and delivery tools there, core connectivity tools. And very importantly, in the cloud, we are very much relying on the APIs. So even that one too there. So these are the core part of the infrastructure as a service. But when you go and utilize the PaaS, there you will be getting some integration and middleware tool on top of that, whatever we have in infrastructure service. And in case of software as a service, we will be actually storing the data, metadata, content, application, presentation, modality layer, and other components there. Because in software as a service, we will be getting those tools through which I can actually manage the cloud itself there. So this is the reason this term we are utilizing SPI. So S for software, platform, and infra. Although mostly is the case that our software as a service is built on top of the platform and platform is built on top of the infra, but it doesn't the case always. Okay, because there might be a possibility that you are offering software as a service directly from your hardware as well there, because we in software as a service we are trying to just virtualize the application and we are trying to offer these services to the consumer at the end of the day. So it doesn't mean that it is always going to work onto the platform as a service only there. It could be directly at the hardware from the hardware itself there. Okay, so but yes, this is what the normal stack we are actually utilizing there, where software is working on top of the platform is working on top of the infrastructure as a service. So at the end of the day, we are trying to offer services to the consumer as per their requirement itself there. So what we had discussed till now is some of the concepts which is related to the cloud, which is very much required. Okay, specifically as a cloud professional, you should be very much aware about what are the different service models we have there, what are the different deployment model we have, and what exactly the factors through which you can actually make the decision for which deployment model or the service model is actually going to be the best for the the consumer as based on their requirement. So definitely it is the information gathering which is one of the critical factor we have there. Without gathering the information, I cannot make the decision about what exactly the best service options we are going to suggest to the cloud consumer itself there. So this is the main critical thing which we actually decide there. Before I'm going to move and discuss one of the reference architecture which has been given there by the NIST for the cloud, there is one more model I wanted to discuss there. But again, this model is not given there by the NIST. This time I'm actually going to discuss the concept given there by the CSA, Cloud Security Alliance. Yeah. So this time, this particular model has been actually given there by the Cloud Security Alliance. Now, like ICA Square, Cloud Security Alliance is also involved in the best practices for the information security. But this time, cloud security Alliance is only focusing on the cloud part there. So they're not actually going to give you the best practices for your, IT infrastructure or other components there. But normally when we have to move on to the cloud, what are the things we have to take care? What are the auditing standards which we have to follow? What are the compliance standards which we have to follow? This is what the relevant things which is discussed under the Cloud Security Alliance white papers there. And they had given lots of different, multiple white paper for the, given controls we have, like might be the DLP, encryption, KMS. There are multiple options we are actually going to utilize onto the cloud there. And for each of them, definitely there are some multiple options we have there. So Cloud Security Alliance has given a logical model of the cloud. So what we had discussed till now is the deployment model. What we had discussed till now is the service model. But this time we have the logical model there. So what is this logical model there? So remember, logical model is going to help identify a different layer based on the functionality. So I must say there, this logical layers, which is given there by the Cloud Security Alliance, it is based on what functionality you are trying to utilize it there, and you are trying to provide it there. Based on that, this overall categorization has been given there. And according to Cloud Security Alliance, there are 4 layers we are actually going to utilize it there. The foundational layer we must have is the infrastructure, and this infrastructure is actually the core component of the computing system, like compute, network, and storage. And remember, this is the foundation for everything else what we are building. Remember, again repeating, this is the foundation for everything else what we are building here. Now, why I'm focusing on this particular sentence? Because it is too much relevant for the examination there. Because you had seen multiple question based on that, which is from the different angle. Normally in the examination is coming it out there. So you must be aware about that infrastructure is the foundation for all of the different thing which I'm actually doing onto the cloud there. Now remember, this infrastructure is completely managed by the provider. Okay, again, completely managed by the provider there. It means this infrastructure is also having one more part, and that is called as the infrastructure facility, on which your hardwares are actually given and configured there. So it is having all the relevant component which we require to manage and configure the cloud services. Yes, on top of that, as a cloud consumer, you also have the responsibility. So definitely for that, we have another layer that is called as the meta structure. So I must say there, after the infrastructure, we have the meta structure. And meta structure is the layer where the protocols and mechanism which is going to provide the interface between the infrastructure layer and other layers. So we have 2 more layers after that. One is the info and one is the apply, or you can say one is the apply and one is the info. Why I'm saying this apply first? Because definitely we are going to have the apply structure, and on top of that only we are going to manage the data. You can say the infrastructure. So infrastructure is going to carry out your data there. I must say it here, the data information like contained in the database or file storage is actually going to work here. But in case of apply structure, we have the applications which is actually going to be deployed onto the cloud, and it should have to have some other services like might be the message queues, specifically if you're having the asynchronous communication between the database and the applications there, some artificial intelligence analysis, or might be the notification service. So everything is actually going to fall under this layer only. But the only differentiator we have, so I must say the info, apply, and infra is not a new layer for us there. It is actually also there in a traditional model there. Or you can say in our traditional IT infrastructure, even these layers are already there. The only differentiator is this particular meta structure. So all the protocol and the mechanism through which we can provide the interface between the infra and the apply or the info is actually going to work on this layer. So I must say on this meta structure layer, we have 2 components there. One is the management plane. And when I'm saying management plane, it is actually the interface through which we can communicate with the infrastructure. And definitely it is the layer through which I can manage the application and the information as well there. So this layer will provide me the interface to manage everything there. So management plane, under the management plane, it could be anything. See, the management plane is the component through which we can manage the cloud. It could be the GUI interface, it could be the CLI interface, or it could be some SDKs there, okay, or it could be the directly APIs there through which you're managing the cloud infrastructure. So all of the components are actually going to fall under this particular management plane only there. But apart from that, in the same layer, we also have the virtualization. So even the virtualization is also working on the same layer, which is actually offering us what? The abstraction concept. Now, from the examination perspective, this point you need to remember that metastructure is the layer where the virtualization and management plane both are actually working. One more thing which we need to consider, management plane security responsibility is also shared. The control which I require to manage as a consumer is exposed by the provider, like encryption or access control, but configured by the consumer. So it is the consumer responsibility to configure it appropriately. So you will be getting that particular feature, or you can say you can protect it. But suppose provider has exposed the control, but you are not, configuring it properly. So at the end of the day, it is actually your responsibility there, and definitely it is you who is responsible and accountable for that particular part there. So that is the 4th layer we have according to Cloud Security Alliance, and the layer which you need to focus is this particular meta structure, because here on this layer we have the management plane and the virtualization, which is actually providing the proper focus of all the I can say the communication between all the rest of the layers itself there. So this is the reason also it is very, very much important itself there. Okay, so this is what we have there. So remember, in the infrastructure service, it is the consumer who is mostly responsible for the security. And in case of software as a service, it is mostly the provider who is actually responsible for the security there. And remember, we have multiple reference architecture, which is actually going to build and let me provide the proper reference for the roles and responsibility. And definitely based on that, we can actually define the overall process for configuring the security itself there. But all in all, if I need to go at the highest level, we have to first identify the requirement of the consumer itself there. So as a professional user, you first going to connect with the consumer, you are going to communicate with them, you are going to understand their different set of requirement like the functionality, security requirement, and other things there. Based on that, you are going to select a proper deployment model. So first thing, I will be selecting the deployment model. After that, I will be defining the service model, and definitely based on that, I can actually filter the provider on which I can host the data. So first, which deployment model will be best, which means is the private cloud, public cloud, or might be the hybrid cloud there. On top of that, which service model is going to best for me there. And finally, I will be selecting the provider based on the given attribute which is established under the requirements there. Now, after understanding those components, we will be defining a proper architecture, like how the roles and responsibility into inflow of the data and other things is actually going to work there. So we'll simply after that, we need to understand and define a proper architecture. Now, architecture from the architectural point of view, might be you are also going to select some framework there. So some well-known framework is actually going to be very much relevant here, like might be SAPSA, Sherwood Applied Business Security Architecture, or might be TOGAF, the Open Group Architectural Framework. So these are actually very much relevant here. But apart from that, specifically for the cloud, there are some other model also has been given there. Like we have the Cloud Cube model, which is going to let you decide the proper deployment and the service model as well there. But apart from that, we also have the Cloud Security Alliance reference options there given there. So that one too you can utilize there. So the main purpose is the architecture is to make sure that you know how exactly the overall communication between the services and definitely who is going to be responsible for that particular services is clearly defined there. So at the end of the day, we are trying to minimize the overall conflict and making sure that everyone is aware about their responsibility and they can do whatever it is required from them. And it should be based on the principle of need to know and the least privilege concept there. After defining the architecture, the next thing we are going to check the control, security control. So I will be accessing the security control there, which is given there by the provider, and definitely I will be comparing with my own requirement there. Now, if provider is providing me the control and if I'm aware about my control which I required there, this is going to help me to identify any of the gap. So I must be saying that here we also need to identify any kind of control gap which has been actually given there because of the implementation there. And this gap I need to identify and fill it out here. And after understanding all the control which is going to let me fill this particular gap, I will be making sure that I can overall design and implement the control there. Implement control there. Okay, and finally, all the control you need to implement with the help of a proper change management concept there. So finally, you need to integrate the changes with the proper management concepts there. So these are some of the, one of the simple design architecture I should say there, which we can actually follow there as a professional. But definitely in each of the component, we have so many different things to check it out and cover it out there. So we will be discussing more about all of this particular component, and I can say there, yeah, this is the in the whole CCSP, this is what exactly we are going to do there. At the end of the day, our main goal is to make sure that my organization is actually, in a correct hand, and definitely it is offering the correct solution to the users there. So this is the another thing which we need to understand, and again repeating, understand the requirement, select the deployment model, service model, and the provider, define a proper architecture, access the security control, understand the gap, and design and implement the control, and definitely make sure that you are managing the changes as per the change model there. As per the NIST. So one of the documentation till now I had discussed from the NIST, and that one is NIST 800-145. This is the initial definition of the cloud there. But apart from that, we have one more reference architectural model given there for the cloud, and that one is given there under the 500-292. So this is another documentation which is very much relevant, specifically from the architectural point of view there. And according to this documentation, there are 5 key roles we have here, which is always going to high level role we have, which is always going to be there. One is the cloud service provider, who's actually offering you the services, specifically in the cloud there, public cloud there. Cloud service provider will be offering you services with the help of some broker. So I must say that we have some CSP, cloud service broker, who is actually providing the brokerage service. I must say there, I will be actually getting the services from the broker there instead of directly interacting with the cloud. Like there's so many broker services we have in between there, who is actually offering services to the end user there by connecting to the consumer, understanding the requirement, and then after they're approaching the cloud providers to let them offer the services, relevant services there, and they're making sure that cost-effective solution they can offer to the consumer based on their requirement there. Apart from that, we also require a cloud carrier who's actually going to carry services from consumer to provider and from a provider to consumer. So I must say that we have the cloud carrier. Apart from that, we also require the support of auditor, who's actually going to audit the cloud services for me, specifically the privacy audit, security audit, and the performance audit is very, very much relevant here. So we also require the cloud auditor there. Apart from the auditor, one more role we have, and that is that role actually we are working for there. So I must say consumer. So that is the 5 role which has been discussed under the 500-292 documentation. One is CSP, cloud service broker, then CSP, cloud service provider. Then we have the cloud service broker, cloud carrier, cloud auditor, and cloud consumer. Now, provider, we are already aware about what exactly the provider will do. But on a high note, provider are the entity who's actually going to offer you the services there. Okay, any kind of service which you're looking for, specifically on the cloud, that one is going to offered by them. And because they're offering you multiple level of services there, definitely I can also categorize their services into multiple component, multiple smaller component there. So I must say there, so make sure that you are aware about these 5 rules there, because these are the key rules given there under the 500-292 documentation, which is pretty much relevant there for us. Now, if I'm selecting the CSP, Cloud Service Provider, so in cloud service provider side, we have multiple responsibility from them there. Okay, like one responsibility I must say there, providers are actually responsible for offering you the orchestration services. I must say the automation, and for the automation they are actually offering you multiple service layer, and that service layer is different for SaaS, different for PaaS, and different for IaaS. So I must say that service providers are offering you the service orchestration, and service orchestration is based on the service layer what they are offering you. And remember, for all of the service model, we have the different service layer. Apart from automation, which is actually to let them allow, configure and manage the services as per their requirement, they are also responsible for offering you the abstraction and control layer. Okay, apart from that, definitely the physical resource layer is already their responsibility. So I must say the physical resource layer is also managed by them only. A resource layer, apart from the physical resource layer, they're also going to provide you the proper management services there. Management for what? Management for business support, management for provisioning of any of the new services there. Let's suppose an example. Right now, the current version of the Windows, we have Windows 2019 there, Windows Server 2019 there. Now, after a few years, might be Microsoft is going to release a new version of the Windows there. In that case, definitely that operating system image should have to be reflected onto the Azure there. I'm not talking only about the Azure, even for the AWS or for Google also there. So consumer always require the new and latest services there. So for that, the proper provisioning, and if there is any old services, it should also have to be, available there. But at the same time, it should also give you the support to deprovision some, vulnerable services there. So I can say there, provisioning, the responsibility. But one of the major responsibility of the provider is actually to offer you the portability, to make sure that whatever the services or the data you're utilizing, it is portable enough. So whenever you're deciding to move into another provider, or whenever you're deciding to move into the private cloud there, okay, that one you can do it very easily there. Apart from the portability, they're also responsible for providing you the interoperability there, to make sure that multiple platform you can communicate with the same service layer, instead of going for multiple different console and purchasing it and then utilizing it there. And definitely, service provider is also responsible for security, and they're also responsible for your privacy there. So I must say there that your provider is responsible for all of the given feature, no matter what service model you are utilizing. Whether it is just IaaS, PaaS, or SaaS, they are responsible for offering you all of these particular given services there, at least, okay, at the minimum level. But definitely, this is what the competitions is going on between the providers. How much they can offer you extra, based on that, your selection is actually going to depend on there. This is the reason the comparison between the services is very, very much required. And for the comparison, there is a documentation given there by the CSA, Cloud Security Alliance. So might be for the initial comparison, you can utilize this CAC documentation there. This is called the Continuous Assessment Initiative Questionnaire, which has been given there by the Cloud Security Alliance. So this CAC document is nothing but it is actually having some relevant questions, okay, that has been asked by the provider. And provider is having responsibility to provide the response whatever suits their services and publish that particular reply in the public domain. So suppose I'm a new consumer, or might be I'm a professional user who is making a decision on behalf of the consumer. So they will be actually taking this documentation, and then they are going to compare the response from the different provider, and then they will decide which provider is actually going to best suits their requirement. Remember, these all documentations you will be getting, this CAC documentation you will be getting onto the provider websites freely. Okay, so you can go there, you can download them. Otherwise, if you're trying to get this documentation, you can also get this documentation from the cloud security alliance websites there. So Google, AWS, and Azure is going to publish this relevant answers to their website, and you can download, and then you can compare the response provided by the provider. And if it feel,
Can you give the full form of that again?
It is Continuous Assessment Initiative Questionnaire. I think, let me just show you that documentation instead of only talking there. So I have already this documentation downloaded in my local system. I will also show you how do you get it on from their website. Let me just quickly find this documentation. Where are you? Where are you? Yep, got it. So I'm having a documentation which has been actually published by the, I must say the.
We're not seeing that part if you're just.
No, I'm actually sharing now. I hope it is visible now. So this is the CSA Continuous Assessment Initiative Questionnaire. And this is a little bit older report, but again, it is still relevant here. And this is actually the AWS service there. So when I go down here and see there's some set of question has been given there. We are yet to discuss about the CCM, Cloud Control Metrics. But I must say there, all of the controls which has been given there in this documentation is already mapped with the Cloud Control Metrics. Now, Cloud Control Metrics is basically an Excel documentation where all the different control which the provider must have based on the services they're offering is given there. And this documentation is properly mapped with those controls there. And if you can see here, there's CID given there. So let's take one column here for the reference. So we have a control group. We have the control ID. The question which is asked by the CSA to the provider, and then the provider response. Like one of the question asked under this documentation, is your data security architecture designed using an industry standard? And then the response from the AWS is AWS data security architecture was designed to incorporate industry leading practices referred to AWS certifications, report and white paper. And for that, we can actually go on this particular website to look for all of the compliance standards which they are actually following there. So there might be a question you have related to privacy. There might be a question you have related to business continuity. There might be a question you have related to change control and data security. So each of them is actually available here. Like here's a data security related question we have. Do you provide open encryption methodology to tenant in order for them to protect their data if it is required to move through public? So here the response has been given there. Network, and the response has been given. All of the AWS API are available via SSH protected endpoint, which provides server authentication. So this response, if you feel that it is actually suitable for you and you can actually trust on that, so definitely you can use it. But remember, these are the assessment questions which is prepared by CSA, and response has been given there by the provider. But this is just for your initial filtering. I must say that based on that documentation, if you are selecting the provider, okay, this is actually not relevant there. Yeah, you can filter the provider, but selection is actually totally depends on the third-party assessment report. It means after this documentation, you should be also checking and verifying the third-party attestations there. So these responses needs to be verified by the independent auditors. And that is what the one of the level has been given there under the security trust and assurance registry. So I hope this CAC documentation is clear to you all. What is that?
So this auditing by the auditors would be done before the purchase or after? How does that work?
Okay, so definitely if you're purchasing any of the solutions, you are going to do auditing before that, correct? But is the provider is offering you solution to do the audit? It means are you as a consumer can go to their premises and do the audit? So definitely not. So
Okay.
what exactly we are doing? You know, third-party auditors are actually going to verify all of these responses on behalf of the consumers. Okay, and those reports are actually going to shared by the provider as per your request. Now definitely it is what actually you are asking. Based on that they can going to offer you the documentations there. Like if you're looking for SOC 2 report, service organization control 2 report, so definitely they cannot offer you, very easily there. For that you have to go through some non-disclosure agreement, and then only they can, because these are some of the sensitive information about the organization. They cannot reveal as very easily there. Okay, so yes, before I'm selecting any of the provider, I have to verify all of their compliance standard, regulations, and all of the controls also, whether it is effective or not. And for that I have to actually verify the third-party attestation reports there, and based on that only I'm going to select there. These are the initial questions which is actually going to help you to filter the provider, but based on that you cannot select the provider there. So definitely for that you're going to have a audit reports with you there.
And those audit reports were not created for me as a consumer. They were created by the provider so that they can give those audit reports to any of their customers who needs a copy of it, typically,
Yeah,
right?
correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
And if an organization wants to involve a third-party auditor, and if they have a contractual, agreement with the service provider, there is a way that the third-party auditor can actually go to their premise and do the audit. So I used to be a third-party auditor, so I have done it. That's why I'm explaining it in detail. So if they have a contract, so the auditor can actually go to their premise and check all the controls and then certify that what they are claiming is true.
Yeah, correct. So definitely, you can actually initiate for this such kind of providers as well there. So
Yes.
yeah. So these are actually the responsibility of the cloud service providers there. But one of the interesting thing we have to actually understand here from the broker side there. Okay, now remember, broker is actually the entity that manages the use, performance, and delivery of cloud services. And apart from that, they are also going to negotiate the relationship between provider and the consumer. So I must say it is the middleman between the provider and the consumer. And that particular broker is going to manage the overall performance and delivery of the cloud services there based on the consumer requirement there. So what exactly under the broker we have? So under the broker we have three different type of brokerage services what they are offering right now. So when I'm saying about the brokerage services, so definitely they are actually taking the request from the consumer, and based on what they require, they are going to offer you the services there. So what exactly those brokerage services are and how exactly we can utilize. So as I told, I think, or am I not, so that the total of three different type of brokerage services they can actually offer you. One is called as cloud service intermediation. Another is called as cloud service aggregation, and the another is called as cloud service arbitrage. So that is the three different type of services which the cloud brokers can offer you. So what is the difference between intermediation, then aggregation, and definitely the arbitrage as well there, and how exactly we are going to utilize those particular services here. So when I'm saying intermediation, so intermediation is basically taking the request from the consumer, okay, and then providing the services to the consumer from the provider. So suppose we are having Azure, who is actually the cloud service provider, and in between there is an organization we have like Accenture, okay, and then we have the consumer. So consumer will make request. They're actually going to connect with the Accenture. Accenture will understand your requirement first, and based on your requirement, they will be offering you services from the provider side. So they will be taking one component there and they will offer you services there to the consumer. This is pretty much straightforward. So we'll take the request, we'll provide the services to you. But the thing is, anytime do I require only one service to manage overall, deployment of my data, or might be services there? So most of the time, I must say there, I don't require only one service. I require a set of service which is actually required to manage the overall configuration there. So in this case, the organization here, I can say the Accenture, is actually going to again take a request from you, and then they are going to offer you a set of service. Like suppose you are trying to host an application onto the cloud as a consumer. So what exactly you are going to do? You are going to tell them the requirement, and Accenture understand that the application cannot be hosted on the PaaS, platform as a service, because of some proprietary structure or the licenses requirement there. It should have to be configured only on the IaaS, infrastructure as a service. So in this case, Accenture is actually going to take the services of the take the VM services from the provider. So Accenture is actually going to build a VM for you first. Yeah. So Accenture is going to first build a VM for you there. Now, after building the VM, Accenture is actually going to install a proper operating system on top of that, definitely. And not only that, so this is actually the compute part. Now, to transfer the data, they will be actually going to create a virtual network. So I must say the network services there. And within that, they might be requiring the public IP. They might require the distributed denial of service protection feature there. They might require a specific firewall. Might be this firewall is proprietary from the Azure, or might be it is the checkpoint firewall, or might be the Palo Alto firewall. It could be anything, okay, which they can actually purchase it from the marketplace very easily there. And apart from that, they might also require the load balancer there. Okay, so I must say that if I'm trying to offer a service to the consumer, okay, with a certain custom application, specifically with IaaS there, I have to integrate multiple services from the same provider. Okay, now this kind of configuration is actually called as the cloud service aggregation. So first type of service we have is the intermediation, where we are offering a certain component to the consumer based on the requirement. But in case of cloud service aggregation, we are aggregating multiple services from the same provider, and then we are offering the solution to the consumer. But there is one more option we have, that is called as the cloud service arbitrage. Now, arbitrage is very much similar to the aggregation. The only difference here that Accenture is not offering you services from Azure only. Accenture can offer you services from the Google, and they can offer you services from the Oracle. They can offer you services from the AWS as well. Like what exactly the consumer is looking for, they're looking for a service, but in a cost-effective manner. So what now the Accenture will do, they might be going to take a very secure services from the infrastructure side, from the AWS, the VPC, virtual private cloud. So this is one of the private cloud options, isolated cloud options given there by the AWS there, specifically for the infrastructure. For the database, Accenture will going to utilize the Oracle cloud there. Okay. For the identity, the Accenture will be going to utilize the IAM feature of the Azure. So I must say the Azure Active Directory. And for the rest of the service might be the rest of the different provider there. So what this time Accenture is doing, they're actually merging all of those particular providers, and they're offering this particular services to the consumer in a cost-effective manner. And definitely the security also. Security is always going to be the utmost priority of any of the services which I'm configuring onto the cloud there. So this time, because I'm offering services by doing the aggregation, but because of the multiple services I'm utilizing from the different provider, this kind of configuration is actually called as the cloud service arbitrage. Okay, so that is the three different level of service which is going to offered by the broker. So again, repeating: cloud service intermediation, cloud service aggregation, and cloud service arbitrage. So do let me know if you have any confusion here in the broker side.
Hey, yeah. Sorry, can you repeat aggregate once?
Aggregation is getting the services, I can say getting multiple services, but from the same provider. So if I'm aggregating services from Azure, like taking NLB, taking Active Directory feature, DDoS protection, but from the same provider, it is called as the aggregation. So providing solution by aggregating multiple services from the same provider is the cloud service aggregation, which the broker is doing. Yeah, so that is what we have there. So what we had discussed till now is what is the responsibility of the provider and what is the responsibility of the broker here. Okay, remember, broker is going to maintain the proper use and performance of the cloud services for the consumer. So broker is going to understand your requirement, and based on that they will suggest you the proper services. And again, it is totally on you. If you want them to manage services on behalf of them, they can definitely do that for you there as well. But most of the time consumers are also having their own administrative users who can manage the cloud services to them there. But broker is actually initially going to set up your infrastructure, and after that it is your administrator who is going to manage those things there. So that is the two main responsibility we have. We have some more things to discuss from the same documentation, but I think it's a correct time to pause the session for today. Is it? So I hope till now whatever we had discussed is clear to you all. Do let me know if you require any assistance what we had discussed today.
Sure. Thanks, Rajiv.
Good
See
night.
you then. See you tomorrow. Yeah, good night. Yeah.